Hello and welcome to this panel discussion. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce, to chair and run this session at Going Global 2021. My name is Gemma Goodborn. I'm the Head of Global Marketing at Grok Global Services, and thank you for joining us today. We're going to be talking about international digital marketing to reach your target audiences. This is an area that was becoming an important factor before COVID-19, and now we've seen the lack of fly-in and fly-out recruitment. There's even greater importance directed towards digital marketing to really influence audiences in their decision-making process. This session today will explore how the localization that your marketing strategy requires is a key factor to targeting and helping ensure the best return on investment of your efforts. So we'll be looking at key techniques and benefits, as well as overcoming common challenges to engage today's students. Looking at common themes and also hearing from multiple perspectives from recruitment and marketing to share their practical examples with you and for your institutions to consider. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. If you are experiencing any technical issues, please use the chat functionality on the right-hand side and message. The session manager will be able to help you. There's also the Q&A function. Use this to ask your questions. If we don't answer them during the session, we will pick this up afterwards with yourself. There's also a few polls on the side panel as well, which consider the topics we're talking about today. Please vote and share your thoughts with those as well, so we can get a consensus on these areas. So without further ado, it's with a very warm welcome to today's panel from across the globe, including the UK, Thailand, Malaysia, and New Zealand. I'd first like to ask our panel to introduce themselves. Linda, over to you.
Hello everybody, good morning from Scotland and good evening to everybody else who's tuning in. My name's Linda O'Neill. I'm the International Marketing Manager at the University of Dundee in Scotland. My main remit is to cover Southeast Asia marketing, and I've also recently taken on East Asia and Middle East and North Africa.
And my name is Ray. I'm Ray Priest. I'm the International Director for the University of the West of England here in Asia Pacific. I should have started by saying Sawadee Krab because I'm based in Thailand, but nevertheless today I hope to be sharing the experience of all of our work across Asia Pacific.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Greetings from New Zealand. My name is Varsha Koutsos and I am the Digital Transformation Accelerator at the University of Auckland. I work in the International Office supporting digital enablement and adoption across the marketing and recruitment functions, and it's a pleasure to be on the panel today. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Julie Xu. I'm the Southeast Asia Marketing Manager from Grok Global. I'm currently based in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. My role primarily involves supporting clients from across the world on their digital initiatives in Southeast Asia.
Fantastic. Thank you all for joining this panel discussion today. So let's get started with talking about localized marketing techniques. As you know, when families investigate their options for study abroad, they're increasingly drawn to information written specifically with them in mind, in local languages, using local platforms. First off to the panel, what areas or techniques should universities be focusing on to really stand out from the crowd online and reach their target audiences?
I guess I might start, if that's okay. From my perspective, it's really about creating that sense of connection. And given the pandemic that we've all been through and still going through, that's really important now more than ever. And it's about providing frictionless experiences with our customers and allowing students to choose how they want to consume content, how they want to engage with each of our universities. So whether that's through providing personalized personalized content, localized content, using peer platforms, allowing prospective students to chat to students that may be in their home country or home city, providing that virtual experience around tours and videos, and also through to giving, local on the ground contacts and social channels for students to be able to engage with in their own time and language, because ultimately, and I don't know if my fellow panelists would agree, it's about being relevant and responsive.
Yeah, I would probably agree with all of that, but also just adding in this sort of authentic voice that's weaved throughout all the different messaging that we have, and making sure that they align to the right audiences as well. And I think for me, a lot of this year has been understanding that we have to serve all the different audiences at different times, whilst keeping it positive, but not obviously over-promising things given what we've all been through this year. So we've really had to sort of separate the messaging out and make sure that it's aligned to the right age group, but also the right region and country as well. So a lot of research has been done this year from my side, and I think we're a lot more kind of confident at who we're trying to target now.
Chantry, a young woman in a village in Cambodia, actually heard a piece on Khmer radio that was hosted by the BBC. And from that, she wanted to reach out to the university. And the way she did that, of course, was to search through digital marketing. And from that, able to link in to a recruiter who then was able to put her onto a nurture track, which again, digitalized, meant that very simply, from a place in rural Cambodia, she could access Bristol, the United Kingdom, and actually for her, the world. And so her journey now is about going across to the UK, and that's the strength of digital marketing.
Absolutely. It has become a pivotal element now. Even prior to COVID-19, it was already a substantial part of the decision-making journey. Everyone is online, even in rural parts of the world. Now, Avasha, you mentioned, COVID-19 has changed outreach online. Linda, you said the past year are not over-promising. Which techniques have worked well for your institutions and your marketing strategies to really cut through to these target audiences? What have you seen that's been working well in these times?
I guess for us, there's been a number of things that have been rolled out. There's a lot of new technology, edtech adoption, and that's from everything from agent aggregators to personalization platforms. I think to Linda's point, and I absolutely agree with that, authenticity is really important, and so we're seeing quite incredible results with a peer platform and using it in different ways, so it doesn't just have to be student to student, for example. And so we're working on initiatives where we have some of our people that are in various markets on different time zones who are able to join either open or closed chats. So I think what's changed, I guess that it'll be easier to say what's not. And I don't say that in a negative way. It's a real good opportunity. We have to show that connection and care for our students all around the world. That's a message of empathy and understanding, and how do we adapt what we're doing so that we show the different ways in which the learning models, the pastoral care, the career support has changed. And so storytelling has always been important, but I think the way in which we reach audiences is key. I think data is becoming more critical, and integration of that data is really critical. And so we've been actually doing a lot of good work in marketing automation using Oracle Eloqua. So I guess it's a little bit of fundamentals, but you need to really identify who your audience is. You need to adapt, and you need to really ensure that that as part of any marketing activity, you're really connecting with your in-market representatives, your agents and partners, and marketing agencies to ensure that, you know, you can hypothesize from anywhere in the world, but actually getting inside the heads, the hearts and minds of your consumers is still paramount.
And I think one of the huge challenges is actually, how do you move beyond that digital experience to it being a very personal experience for the individual? Yeah. How do you create that connection? And I think that's something that's been a real challenge for us, that how do we actually move from whatever marketing approach that we've used to actually engaging with that student where they see themselves as an individual that's being embraced in the kind of learning community. I mean, the stress that's been put on our team in terms of using chat forums, you know, WeChat, WhatsApp and whatever to connect with students, it's been amazing. But of course, it's about connecting personally. But the trouble with connecting personally, how do you manage that over a 24-hour period within your team? So I think that's a real challenge for us, moving from that bigger picture to something that's really small and individual and engaging the individual person.
Yeah, I think the personalization side has been key for us as well, like looking at previous email engagement journeys that we did have and how we can then localize those and maybe use a regional student within the email journey, a testimonial, a video, and then align any scholarship offering that's very regional based to that email journey, really just delving into a lot of the content and messages and almost stripping a lot of the copy back and keep it really, really clear and simple and visual. I think we've struggled to create new videos this year, but what we have done is really used our students who are on campus and who are in Dundee and got them to really talk about their experience and use that as that authentic voice. From the parent side as well, we've explored third-party channels as well and really like talk to the parents, have Q&A sessions, webinars. And I think what's come out of that is they want to know what the next destination would be after university. So weaving in a lot of careers and employability messaging and giving that reassurance that, you know, they will be able to be employed after their degree, but where will that take them? And have those success stories from current students weaved into that as well. So we've tested lots of that, and I think it's been a really good year to do that.
Yeah. To add on, Linda, certainly for the past year, due to the complexity of the online customer journey, literally as a marketing person, you have to explore multiple channels, not just limit on the usual channels that you used to do, but to explore influencers or parents group, different areas, different multiple channels, just to really engage with your audience at different touch points along the way through their journey. And I think that's something very critical during the pandemic. Consider all the physical contacts are shut or closed. You have to find different ways of engaging with your audience.
And there's some very good points there, and the common misunderstanding when it comes to localization of marketing is the immediate thought is, well, that's just translation. Well, when it comes to localizing marketing, that could be very different depending on the country. The most obvious one to many higher ed recruiters is marketing in China. The localization required there is very obvious. It's different messaging. It's not just translation. It's how that's articulated. The platforms are very different. The user journey. So Julie mentioning about touch points. The touch points are very different. Email marketing does not work in the same way there. So that's kind of like the obvious kind of country where there's the localization challenges. I know, Ray, you mentioned WeChat already. Yeah. And the challenges that brings up with that one-to-one personalized requirements. How have your team dealt with those challenges and try different things to help with that?
I mean, literally, obviously, they've tried to divide the work between themselves as a team. That's an obvious thing to do. But the reality is, that at some point they have to close down from the day. That's the human reality, and say that they're not responding for the rest of that day. But just thinking in China in general, I think one of the things that's interesting, we've mentioned data already, is how challenging it often is to get data back in the way that we would see as conventional elsewhere. So for instance, we've done a lot of live streaming work in China, and people are constantly saying to us, well, who was on the live stream? Can you give us information, the leads from the we can't get that information. We can just give you a number, and the numbers are very high. And I think it's those sorts of things that can feel frustrating. But on the other hand, you do know through platforms like WeChat, when you're beginning to connect, because people join from that, and so you're beginning to get a real sense of how you're growing the market and how you're developing the market. And I think the other thing, I mean, actually, I think whether it's China or Malaysia or India, at the end of the day, of course, the key market as well, or the key group as well, is talking to parents. And one of the things I think in China that has been a real challenge for us is how do you embrace youth culture and the excitement that youth culture has, and at the same time, particularly during this COVID time, how can you actually create that kind of secure and, if you like, welcoming, friendly, safe kind of environment that the adults, the parents, can connect with. And that's been quite a challenge for us. You know, where do we reach out to the parents as against to the young people? And I'm not sure we've quite got there yet with digital marketing. I think that's still a challenge for us.
I'm just jumping in because I'm quite new to China, but I find that really insightful, because that's something that I'm discovering more and more, is that we've kind of got the youth side kind of nailed on China, and we feel that our content's serving that audience quite well, but huge gap is the parents, and it's how do we do that? And so that's a big challenge for us coming up this year.
I guess from our point of view, early last year, when the New Zealand government closed its border to China before the start of our academic year, we, quickly shifted to online delivery to support those of our students, stuck offshore. However, we heard that many of our students found it really hard to stay motivated. They miss that social interaction that they get on campuses. And thanks to the strength of previous relationships that the University of Auckland has, developing joint programs and institutes with our partner universities in China, we were able to very rapidly launch our China Learning Centres in semester 2 last year, offering students a hybrid learning model with the online experience of studying with University of Auckland, but also the social experience of being on campus with that local pastoral care and learning support. And this successful initiative is really a great example of crisis response collaboration. There was a lot of people involved, a lot of great people working really hard, shared vision, and it was all about delivering that best possible outcome for students in China and giving them that option, that choice, that alternative. And we're seeing enrolments continue to go from strength to strength. So I guess they have the choice of choosing to study across 5 respected institutions in China, but feel very much branded University of Auckland connected with us here in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
There's some really key points there that about China, the data, the crewing the data is very different. Connecting with the audiences is very different. But these are common challenges across the board as well, right? The understanding the different audiences and focusing on parents, where in some countries they are very much the decision maker. Many countries in Southeast Asia, in particular, I know Julie, you've experienced with that. That has been the number one priority audience. What are the other challenges are you seeing when it comes to localization and in international marketing?
I think one of the things that is quite important for us in terms of we're working across something like 40 countries in covering Asia Pacific. And I have to be honest, when I first took in this role, I tended to think about Asia Pacific has won. And what a mistake that is. You know, it was just so ridiculous. I'm in Southeast Asia, so perhaps I had a little bit more insight into how Southeast Asia culture worked and what people's perceptions were, although very much as an outsider. And actually, when you look to other markets, it's not even regional. It's country by country, the significant. And so how do you address that? How do you address, you know, the issue of what somebody is looking for in Nepal to the issue of what somebody is looking for in Vietnam? And it goes very much down even to subject level, you know, in terms of what you're looking at promoting. And therefore, when you put webinars together or you put together activities, how can you focus those in terms of meeting the appeal of particular markets? And, you know, I think that's where the strength of engaging alumni, I think we've already mentioned social influencers who actually come from those home countries, actually engaging becomes that authentic voice that Linda talked about. And, but it is a massive challenge. But on the other hand, it's a challenge that, where is the difference? We used to fly and travel and whiz in and whiz out, you know, from areas. Isn't this better? Isn't this better to actually be focusing our resource on what we can target much more cost effectively in terms of meeting that kind of local cultural need?
I think from our side as well, I think there was that culture that Southeast Asia was one, and we had to have one strategy that fitted into that. But since over this year particularly, we've definitely got different digital strategies for each country. They're completely different, and I think Ray's point on product as well. So we've done a lot of market analysis on what courses are aligned to those countries specifically. For example, in Thailand, it's a very law dominant subject for us, so we focus a lot of our content and testimonials and scholarship offering towards law and target the audience in that. Singapore is very much aligned to our partnership program, and Malaysia is much wider, but with a focus on sort of the STEM subjects. So what we can do now is apply the strategy, the digital strategy to each country, and then monitor those results with that, and use the channels that align itself to the country rather than the region. And I think that's been a big takeaway, and working with Julie on breaking it down by country and then producing the data to report back to the institution has been helpful. And it's got the university thinking completely different, because I think there was very much this regional talk, whereas now we talk about country and performance, and also the change in landscape with COVID as well across each country. It's all very different even within the region. So yeah, I think that's one big takeaway for us is it's not one size fits all. You really need to investigate your strategy in the country, not just the region.
Can I just add on, like, to echo Linda? Definitely, there's no one size fits all solution, and also very often from a marketing perspective, you have certain market research data, but still you're unsure whether that will work or that will resonate with your audience, and you have to go through the testing stage to do A/B testing, to do optimizations, to constantly communicate with your recruiters as well, just to gain those insights about exactly what's going on, what's the lead quality, and what's the feedback. And along the way, you will tweak your messaging, you will optimize your channel. Eventually, you will gain insights from there, and for you to plan as a next step.
I completely agree with you, Julie. I mean, the University of Auckland's international office has got quite a mature strategy, market by market, and in some cases literally it's region by region, you know, within a country, because they're quite distinctive. We have you know, a range of different partnerships, bi and trilateral arrangements and agreements. We have some of our team actually located offshore in key markets, and so there's a number of different tactics that we have. And I was thinking about the question about challenges, and I think there's a multitude. I think that what we know as professional marketers is that, you know, there are certain drivers in our audiences that that we all no doubt see and hear. And one is that obviously studying online is very different, and it can be really challenging for them at times. And to the point we've already touched on around data, testing, that sense of community and connection is really key, but not always easy to achieve. Then we've got, I guess around that, some border restrictions easing, others tightening, and this is just an ebb and flow that we're going to see, which means that, what we can do actually on the ground in markets, or what's appropriate to do, or those face-to-face activities shifts all of the time. So it can be minute by minute, moment by moment, which is some of the conversations that, Gemma, Julie and I have in different markets depending on what's happening. And then of course we've got the fundamentals about how do you, what data points do you have, and how are you joining them up, not only across your own teams, but actually the wider university? And then how do you get, actionable, meaningful insights out of that, so you're actually doing something with it rather than having data for data's sake? And it's not always easy with technology to talk to, say, a vendor's platform coming into a university and clipping into sometimes a very complex IT environment. And then all around that is that, identity is critically important. Security is critically important. How we treat that information, how we show transparency around that information, what are we doing with it, is becoming increasingly important. And then, of course, the drivers that we know, the employability outcomes, the climate change, environmental, all of these causes that our students are passionate about, are also key. So it's not easy, but it's certainly a lot of fun, that's for sure. And to your point, Julie, you have to really keep trying, testing, exploring, emerging new technology, new channels, and also, we can get quite inward looking sometimes, can't we, if we're not going out and doing that testing, rather than saying, well, I've tried that before and this is what it was. Well, it's a different moment in time now.
Yeah, I think there was a really good example earlier in the year about the low number of leads, particularly in, say, Singapore versus Indonesia, and we knew kind of why, but we had no evidence to back that up. But we worked with Julie on a sort of market research sort of project, if you say, which looked at digital behaviour, and it was around your point there about a lot of people just don't feel comfortable sharing their personal information, their data. They don't want to fill in a lead form from the first minute they see an ad. So all that insight came back, and we then were able to explain a lot more about why the leads are low, but why would somebody click on an advert and fill in their information and send it, particularly in these times. So all these sort of projects that we had have really helped us adapt and explain to people why, the answer is not always a lead gen form. So
yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? It's actually getting on the same page sometimes, because
exactly.
you go into these meetings, it's like, it's lead gen, it's demand gen, it's nurture, and it's like, okay, actually, who is the customer, what's the journey? And we actually even have a student life cycle messaging framework. So at that point, at that stage, what sort of information and how might they want that information communicated? So it's really key.
It's making me laugh. I've just been smiling listening to the conversation, because, the challenge of the recruiter, and I come from the recruitment side rather than the marketing side. So I want to know if my leads have gone into some kind of digital nurture track. I want to know what has happened to those leads. Where is it linking back to me? Where is it producing results? And indeed, anything that we spend money on, I want to know what's the result.
Yep.
And God, just everything you're just saying, it's so reassuring, and I bet it is for everybody listening in, that this is not an easy journey. This is a real challenge for us to constantly overcome, to really understand what that data is showing us. So I think that was refreshing. I haven't got an answer. I just think it was good to know.
Yeah, it's also evident of the student audience user journey of today. It's not just simple, easy, one funnel down from marketing to recruitment. It's not that simple. And that's where the localization, if you're doing that to really emphasize it on the return of investment, that's where your user journey does start to get a little bit complicated. You're not going to necessarily have audiences, as Linda mentioned, filling out lead capture forms in one area compared to another area. And that is dependent on the segmentation of that as well. But you don't know this until you've led with data. You can make these you can think this is how it is. But more commonly, and this is where it comes with what Julie's saying about working with recruiters and what Ray's saying about that recruitment and marketing collaboration, understanding the change in user journey as well. What does work now probably won't work next year. Campaigns that were working this time last year may change again in a matter of months.
Yeah.
So that continual testing and optimization is needed. But Ray, it comes out to what you're saying. It's recruitment's got the same goals, marketing's got the same goals, but how do you work together? And I'm not saying there's a one size fits all, just like localization, there's not a one size fits all. But are there any areas that yourselves at universities have tried to work to get the teams working together?
I think one at Dundee, which is probably the most obvious for us that's new, and it's really simple. This isn't even like a really kind of obvious thing, but it's really using our in-country rep as that call to action to get in touch with her, and using WhatsApp. So take away the number of clicks to get the answer, take away the email, and just have the in-country's details on the landing page straight through to WhatsApp. And there's that instant personal connection right away, which I think in these times when we all are working remotely or unable to meet in a coffee shop or whatever for a chat, or even parents meeting with her, you've still got that instant digital connection through a platform that everybody's using. So we've adapted our landing pages and our call to actions to get that instant in-country connection with the recruiter, and that has been working well. I mean, we have seen that response rate go up, and she has been getting more of those direct inquiries. So we've been doing that. We've also just been ensuring that there's that lead follow-up and management. So we're always asking for feedback from the recruitment team on leads and from any agencies that we work with as well in country, so that we can then quickly go back and work with Julie on changing some messaging or answering the person's inquiry from the advert, not for them to have to ask it through an email. So I think it's not going to be something that's going to happen quickly, but it's certainly got better over the last 6 months. And I think it's crucial that we have that relationship with the recruitment team, and particularly the in-country recruitment teams as well.
And it extends their capacity as well, right? It extends their capacity if you're getting quality leads in.
I think they're finding it so difficult because they're used to traveling, they're used to meeting up with groups of students, they're used to meeting parents, they're used to talking to groups, and I think that they're missing out on that face-to-face. So we need to make it as quick and easy for them as well, but still having that personal touch is really important, I think.
So interesting in terms of bringing teams together. We actually deploy 65 staff across Asia Pacific in country, and actually for Julie, who particularly works on this side of getting people within the country not to have this, I need this and I need it now, in terms of whatever it is for an event, an activity, and to actually say, well, let's actually think about all the steps in that journey and how can we optimize that? How can we really get the best from that campaign? And I think that's a long journey. We mustn't cut through that. I think it's quite important to almost go through that pain of working together, however frustrating it can be at times, because I think in the end, that's how the team learns to adapt and change their practice. Because just like Linda said, it's been very frustrating and difficult for teams in this period of time because they're having to change and adapt the very way they've worked for many, many years. So Yeah.
I guess I have the luxury of working very closely with the international recruitment and marketing teams, and they literally are located side by side, and our business development team are there as well, and those teams are very connected to our agents and market representatives around the globe, and I think proximity matters, and what I was thinking about in this conversation is it's really important to have that collaborative approach from the get-go, whether or not you're talking about a campaign or a virtual event or a new initiative or some form of technology platform, because if you do it in that way, it's amazing how those decisions and the approach is thought about, the resourcing required, having that local lens across things, because quite often that has informed and shaped things. And I guess an example that comes to mind is that we launched an initiative called Auckland Advantage, which is a support package of products and services based on career support, study support, and transitional housing support for our students who were studying online offshore. And what we found was that that sort of collective name of Auckland Advantage, was a bit ambiguous for some people. They didn't really understand what it meant, and there were quite a few different offerings for students in that. So after taking a wider view, talking to our recruitment team, talking to our people in market, and listening to what they were hearing from the ground, and working with Gemma and Julie, it was about, well, we really need to take that localized lens on this and pull at that one or two, hero products or services that's relevant to that particular market, and then don't assume anything. Then again, do your testing. Just to we think we've got it right, but then do your testing, which we have done and continue to do. And I say that because that collective view is really important, and I'm quite certain in saying that the success of the China learning centres wouldn't be the case if it wasn't that wide view, because we, even from a marketing and recruitment point of view, think, well, we work closely with our contact centre because they have they manage the university's chat function, they do inbound, outbound calling, they will feel the effects of the various international marketing and recruitment activities that we do. And we've got a program around study buddies, so we have international study buddies that chat to students at their request around the world, and again, they need to know what we're doing, and so I think it's that communication, that connection, that perspective, both localized and across the marketing and recruitment teams and business development, is really key to getting it right, because it's interesting what happens when you don't have a diverse representation.
Yeah, it's funny how everything sort of starts to come back to you as you remember things, but another really simple example of how we've worked with recruitment more recently is something as simple as making sure we promote ahead of any virtual event that they may be at, so virtual fairs. There was always that kind of separation before, so Julie and I worked on getting a list of some key fairs that our in-country recruiters were going to, promoting them through the digital channels, and then ensuring that there was that build-up and awareness, but then more importantly making sure that any leads that were part of that event were then quickly fed back and embedded into the data that we can then use, and then we use that for retargeting. So it's all these simple things which when you say it seems really basic, but it's that connection with the recruitment activity, and we're trying to get them to share as much of their online virtual events as possible so that we can use them the best way we can in terms of follow-up. So I think that's been really important for us as well.
Yeah, can I just add that I always find it very useful and insightful whenever you have catch-up sessions with the recruiters, because basically they are the people working with, engaging with the students and parents on a daily basis. They know exactly what are the frequent asked questions, what are the topics they would like to know, and actually that would dictate your messaging. That's the information we should be crafting as a content, promoting and providing information they are looking for. Also to understand exactly how do we do targeting. Are these students coming from a specific cities or town within the country? How do we do geo-targeting instead of targeting all across the whole country? Actually, that this type of insights from the recruits actually help us to optimize and actually be more targeted, more localized in a way. So I often just set up a frequent catch up with all the recruiters. And it's interesting because as Ray said, when you have multiple countries, the way they communicate with you is different, but you can tell from there your messaging have to be different. Otherwise, how do you communicate with local people? So it's a interesting discussion. Communication also inspires you to have different ideas of how you're going to engage with your audience.
While in-country recruiters are, really key, they sound like for all of you, they're giving some critical knowledge, critical face of the institution in country, usually meeting face to face. What I notice is they rarely have the technical skills or expertise to actually run digital marketing campaigns on various platforms. And that's okay. That's what marketing is here for. But how critical is that expertise? Linda, I know you're mentioning some very basic stuff here, but what about when it comes to retargeting or using specialist platforms or doing search engine marketing? How much is that expertise critical?
I think more than ever. I mean, I've certainly had to learn a lot about all the digital sides, much more than say last year, for example. But I think what's been more of a challenge is explaining it to the outside of marketing. So explaining it to the recruitment, explaining it to academics who have that academic but regional hat on as well. And when we break down the data, it's being able to pull out everything rather than just number of leads. I think I've said it before, but I think there's a real issue with everyone looking at the end column rather than looking at the start of the journey right through. The investment for education, it's a massive, huge investment for anyone to say to their child that they're going to invest in them for either 4 years, 3 years, or as a postgraduate 1 year potentially. But they're not just going to click on the first thing they see and sign up. So we need to get away from thinking that, and we need to explain that to the wider community and the university when we show them data. So we've had to really break it down a lot more for them. Keywords, you mentioned SEO, hugely important. So we're always going back to redefining those, looking at what ones have worked, what ones haven't, reviewing them often with the team, reaching out to the academic departments, because for specific courses that are maybe very, very niche, we have a lot of medical science courses at Dundee, so we need to make sure that those keywords are in there and they're aligned for people searching for something very specific. So that's something that we're building up in the team as well. But I think it's more about splitting it out into different sections of data and different sections of the technology, because there's just so many now that we need to learn about and be quite agile as well with that for the different countries and the different products of what we're trying to do.
It kind of all brings us back as well, as I listen in with the conversation, to with all this happening, and we're hearing today, everyone is engaging in developing social activity in terms of digital activity. So what's going to make us unique? That's what I'm sat here thinking about. What are we going to do in the next year that will make us stand out? That word authentic that has come up a lot today, because you're quite right, Linda, people are going to invest lots and lots of money if they're studying overseas, whichever country they're moving to, or even in their own country, investing a lot of money. So what is going to stand you out in the crowd? And be authentic, because at the end of the day, we're not selling something. We're not selling a used car. We're selling education.
I think a lot of the mindset as well, in the past was really about the academic course, and you were always about the USPs of the course and how amazing the facilities are and the library and the labs, and it was all about almost showing off what you have, whereas we can't really do that as much now because a lot of people already know what course they want to do. So we've also looked at what's the destination sell, what are they coming to experience out with that academic experience. So the lifestyle, the environment, as was mentioned about climate, about the lifestyle they'll have after they finish their lecture. How can they get around? Is it public transport? Can they walk around the city? What can they do at their weekend? What's the public transport like? And that sense of belonging and feeling welcome. So there's almost like two separate strategies that we've got the academic one, which we've got the rankings and all that we can talk about, but what are they going to be like when they're here? Who are they going to meet? What's our community like? And I think we forget too much about that, but more than ever this year, we've had to really look at the more softer sell, the destination, not just Dundee, but Scotland. What does Scotland have to offer a student? What can they do? They can't travel to Europe at the moment. So we're looking at, what can you do in 48 hours in Scotland? You can be in the mountains, you could go skiing in the winter, you can go hill walking at weekends, beaches, it's all that lifestyle. And I think young people want a lifestyle as well as a study. So I think we really need to factor all those different things in, and that may make us stand out and be unique. Ray, to your point, is what does your destination give a student and parents? What reassurance can you give them that their child's going to have fun but be safe at the same time? So it's almost like a package. It's such an investment now. We just can't base it on the academic side at all.
No, and I completely agree with you, Linda. I think it's, and a lot of the research you see, it's again that form of connection. Will I make friends? Will I meet people from a parent perspective? Is it safe? Food is always critically important. Maybe it's about getting a part-time job. For all audiences, it's about outcomes. So will I likely get a job? It is definitely destination marketing, and we're increasingly doing work with Education New Zealand around that, because obviously, they sell the destination to the world, and so it makes sense to align. And I think it's I guess different audiences, different decision makers, different messaging. And some it's very important about, the reputation, the ranking, the prestige, the academic quality, as we know, and I guess, with Auckland, it's about, the harbours, the everything is generally within a couple of hours reach, but that safety, the livable city, and all of those things. So it is a whole life now, because of that investment. And I think, they do take that seriously. So in that, I think there's two key parts. And one is that obviously our alumni are role models, aren't they? They've gone ahead. They've achieved in different parts of their lives, and so I guess there's that aspirational aspect, and then of course the current students that can say, whether it's online or on campus, they can tell what that whole care is looking like. What is the academic support? What is the experience like? Friends, food, fun, and yeah, right. I know.
So important.
Well, it brings why I say it is it brings people together.
Community,
no matter what culture we are all in around the world, literally top to bottom. In all of our cities. It brings people together, international, local. So, yeah.
I think, I mean, I'm just quickly looking, we've had a few votes in on the polls, and one of the top challenges for this next year is about increased competition online, as we've obviously already mentioned. And that is why what you're talking about the whole package, about true unique selling points, will obviously be critical, but bringing it back to localization, different unique selling points are going to be to different audiences, to different cultures, etc. I think it was Julie, you had a webinar this past week with students.
I was going to say it was an APAC webinar, and actually with a bunch of current students, all the participants were keen to know exactly what happened now. What will happen when they arrive? What's going to happen during the quarantine and after that, and how's learning? And also about the vaccine program. And it's so interesting, we have 2 students who just got vaccinated, or another one just got appointment, so that instant and authentic experience sharing have really high engagement and responses, and students really value those insights or inputs or experience sharing from the current student. And I can see that during the pandemic, because everything is changing so rapidly on a daily basis, and that type of current student sharing does help to provide real, also to give them the information they're actually looking for.
Mm. Yeah, you're right, Julie. I mean, when I think about, I spent some time sitting in with our international study buddies just so I could hear firsthand, you know, the kind of queries they have, the concerns that they have, and many of them, you know, because those that that are studying at home online and don't get to practice their English as much. You know, it's having that connection for both language skills and what is actually going on, and I think that authenticity is definitely localized, because it's arrive doesn't mean arrive in the way it used to a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and the consequences of arriving are very different now. And for some, you know, there's heightened anxiety around that. And so it's important that we address that in a really real way.
I think quickly on your point, Jem, about competitors as well, is you've got to almost not align yourself too much to them, because at the end of the day, you know, Dundee, for example, is a very small city. We can't say we have this large city environment with everything you need at, you know, your fingertips, like Edinburgh, Glasgow, for example. But what Dundee is different about is this, this, and this, and it may not appeal to everybody. But the key thing is not to sell something that isn't what they're going to get. And I think being quite true to yourself, being very, very open about that is really important. And using the student content video or student walking around the city to show someone how this is the city you're going to be in to study. And it'll appeal to some and it won't to others, but just be quite true and authentic about it. And you'll always have a competitor that has something else. It's just what it is. But yeah. I think you've got to be quite confident about what you are offering them, and embrace that in your messaging.
And target those audiences that are going to consider your offering.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's critical for the return on investment, and using digital marketing and data here, what we're talking about as well.
Yeah.
You can't be everything to everyone. So be something really good to the ones that you can offer. That is why I think, Julie, you'll agree with me. I don't think we've ever worked with 2 universities that are exactly the same.
No, completely. Certainly. And not just a unique selling point or the ranking. It's not about that. It's actually how each university actually approach audience in a different way, how their recruiter collaborate, even if it's with high school or partnership or with agents. All this dictate how you're going to plan out your marketing plan.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're running into the top of the hour shortly, and I know we've covered quite a lot on this call. What I would like to ask the panel for is their final thoughts, or a couple of tips that they would like to share with the audience, or quick wins that the audience can take away from this session, and think about with their institutions. Perhaps Linda, I could go to yourself first.
Yeah, I'll be super quick. I think I've got 3 tips really. I think before you launch any campaign is understand your audience. Do a whole load of research on that first, and then really break it out into the channels you want to align those messages to and the campaigns to. And then the minute you have done that, always be testing the data, share the data, optimize the messaging, the content, and A/B test everything, whether that's a video or a message or an image. Always do your A/B testing right the way through the process and report back. Don't be scared to keep reporting. That's what I would say. And I think finally it's just that authentic voice. We've all struggled to get videos this year. We've struggled to be on campus, but try and just be very, very unique in what you can do and use the students who are on campus. It doesn't need to be polished. It's just that true student voice that we want to share out within our campaigns, and I think that's come across in some of the content we've done this year. So I think that's my 3 top tips.
Ray, can I go to you next?
Yeah, I'm just going to say 2 things just to conclude really. The first thing, I want to use Chantry again, our student from Cambodia. If it wasn't for digital marketing and for all the connectivity that went through with that, all of the platforms that followed through, Chantry would not have made her journey, that student journey. And to have achieved that journey, as a university, I don't think we could do that alone. So my second point really is don't be afraid to go out to specialists, to go to someone who you feel you can work with. I'll embarrass you, Gemma and Julie now, because we work with Grok in terms of supporting our marketing across Asia Pacific. And we do that because we feel that we can trust together that kind of all the things we've talked about today. And we mustn't be frightened about saying we've got all the expertise. Look outwards, because that's in fact what we're asking the whole of this program to be, looking outwards. So that'd be my tip. Actually go with whoever partner you feel you can trust, but don't feel you've got to do it all yourself.
And that dovetails beautifully, thank you, Ray, into I guess a few tips. Definitely working with in-market partners, agencies and representatives to really understand that local channel. It does change, content nuances, but also to get that real intel on the ground, particularly valuable given the ever-changing COVID situation. They know it, they see it more than we do. Localize your call to actions and engage where you have them, your in-market reps, to really nurture leads and support conversion where possible. We've talked about this, but again, it needs to be resaid around using dynamic content and video. It always performs well, as does, to Linda's point, that, good user-generated content, that authenticity around that. We're seeing peer-to-peer as really powerful in amplifying your international marketing and recruitment efforts. Your students are your best advocates, demonstrating the student experience, regardless of if it's the hybrid online or on campus. And as always, I think you've heard us say it a million times because it's worth saying, listen to your digital marketing data.
Okay, from my side, I think it's just to also echo what we have discussed before. There are so many countries, and certainly there's no one size fits all. Even if it's within the region, each of them they do vary country by country, and explore different channels. I think it's critical. Nothing as common, nothing as usual. There's no standardized way of you must explore certain channels and exclude certain ones. During this pandemic, everything is evolving, everything is changing rapidly, quite fast. So to explore different channels, to do testing, gain insights from there, and then optimize and plan out your next year plan. I think that's the quick wins from my side.
Absolutely, and just to add on to that, Julie, what will work for one institution will work differently for another. We're talking about video, different channels, etc. If I take a crude example of TikTok, it's not right for everyone, but there's different panels, different avenues, different targeting that all institutions can approach to meet their goals. Fantastic. We are with 1 minute to go, which I'm super happy about. I want to thank everybody on the panel for taking the time today to be on this discussion and also share their thoughts, insights and experiences today. I'd also like to thank the British Council for Going Global and the audience for attending today, and I really hope you enjoy the rest of today's conference. Thank you.